Good morning, and special greetings from the continent of Africa. My name is Charles Owuba, and I'm the Regional Vice President for World Vision in East Africa. And I've been with World Vision for the past 13 years, 7.5 of which was actually here in the U.S. I work for World Vision in the U.S. in our Washington, D.C. office. And prior to that, I was actually finishing my program at Purdue University, which is just south of here. It's very interesting how I ended up at Purdue. You want to know this? My first choice was to go to the University of Michigan. But my scholarship was just not enough to go to that university. So I decided to go to my second choice, Purdue. And one of the reasons I chose Purdue was I took the map, looked at where Michigan was, where Purdue, Indiana was, and I said, since Purdue University in Indiana is on a much lower latitude than Michigan, it was going to be much, much warmer. Wrong. So coming from Ghana, where average temperatures range around 75 degrees, you can imagine how I felt during the cold Midwest winters. If I have to do this again, if I have to make that decision, guess where I'm going to be? In Florida. It is indeed an honor for me to be able to speak with you this morning, and I have titled my message as Sowing the Seeds of Hope Through For Every Child campaign. My plan is actually to give you vivid examples of how this campaign is improving the lives of people in East Africa. But I need to say this, in speaking with my colleagues, Bruce Wilkinson in Southern Africa and John Baptiste Kamate in West Africa, and as someone who has lived and worked in West Africa, and as someone who has also worked in Southern Africa, I know there are impact stories also from those regions. And so what I'm going to share with you are just examples of the transformation that we're achieving together from the continent of Africa. There's so many great examples that I can share with you. It will take days, not 30 minutes. So therefore, allow me to share just a couple. But before I do that, let me just share with you who I am and how I was brought up. I was born and bred in rural Ghana. My mother and father never had the opportunity to go to school at all, not even kindergarten. So my father, a peasant farmer, struggled. It was tough. So my mother was actually helping my father on the farm, and they realized quickly that just the two of them on the farm every day was not going to help us. So my mother decided that she needed to do something else to support the family. Guess what she did? She says, well, I can prepare food to sell. Where was she going to get the money from? Guess what? A cousin of my mother decided to give a small amount of money. And that's what my mother used to prepare food on the side of the road in Ghana, in our hometown. And that's what supported us. And so, the reason I'm sharing this with you, those of you that have been around me for a long time, to share with you my own passion for microfinance. Because if it hadn't for that seed, money given, I probably would not be here speaking with you. So every morning at 5:30, my mother would wake up, rush to the side of the street in our hometown, get the firewood together, put a big pot on the fire, pour water into it, bring in the maize and start preparing. Those of you that have traveled to Africa, Banku or Ugali or Nshima, that's what my mother did. So she would prepare that and start selling. As children, we would also wake up with her. But our duty was not to go and help her prepare the food. Our duty was actually to walk that 2-mile distance to go and fetch water from the river and bring it home. 2 miles, 2 miles back. And when school was in session, we were asked to make 2 trips. On the second trip, we would go with our sponge, soap, and towel. So we go to the riverside, and I will go and I'll cut banana leaves. They're so broad, or plantain leaves. We'll put it on the side of the river, get a bucket full of water, get your lather on your sponge, right, with the soap, take our shower near the riverside, wash ourselves, fetch water, and rush back to the house. We will quickly eat and then rush to school. Most times we were late to school, and the teachers at the time, they didn't forgive us for being tardy. Remember those days? Come with a big stick. And some of us were perpetually late for going to school. If there was time I had to show the back, there's still some lashes from those days from being late. The reason I'm sharing this with you is to let you know how much I personally appreciate what this campaign is doing for a lot of people on the continent of Africa, and why we want to work together to make sure that those individuals we're helping will have a much better life than I did. Here's a story on sanitation project in Kenya. In July 2010, the government of Kenya's Ministry of Public Health and Sanitation conducted a survey in a part of Kenya called the Lower Nyakash Division. The results of the survey indicated critical hygiene and sanitation gaps in the area. For example, the survey revealed that only 44% of the people in that area had access to latrines. Only 44%. So the low access to and utilization of latrines meant that the people in the area openly defecated in the nearby bushes. Normal. Morbidity rate in that particular community was so high because of the fecal-related diseases, and children under 5 years were actually dying. They also found out that actually the attitude of people towards latrines was so bad. General hygiene was so poor. And so in August 2010, using funding from this campaign, World Vision Kenya initiated a community-led total sanitation project in the area. Now, this is a hygiene and sanitation approach that enables community members to analyze their own hygiene and sanitation practices, identify their gaps, and then we work with them to find a solution to it. And all we do is to make sure we only use local materials in terms of helping them. So World Vision, in conjunction with the district health officials, we were able to mobilize 60 out of the 126 villages in the area, and we work with them through this. There's a particular village that needs mentions called Kosano because of the outstanding success they had. This village mobilized themselves and were able to help the communities to construct 148 latrines in the community. Now, this meant that 60% of families that did not have access to latrines now had access. And after that, this small village decided to take the revolution to other parts of the community. For us in World Vision, it was like sowing a seed, nurturing it, watching the plant grow, and the plant bearing fruit. So here we were, this small village was now moving from one place to the other, preaching the message and helping others to be able to have latrines. Let me summarize for you some of the achievements that we had. I've already indicated at the beginning of this survey, before we got there, only 44% of the people had access to latrines. 12 months later, that number had jumped to 64. 12 months later, 44 to 64. Number of households with refuse pits at the beginning of the project was 10%. Within a 12-month period, that number had gone to 30%. Number of households with bathrooms. Yes, bathrooms. Something we take for granted. Beginning of the project, 40%. Within a 12-month period, the number had reached 70%. The number of people washing their hands after using the latrine before the project, 1%. Within a 12-month period, 22%. Here's another story on water and sanitation, this time around from Uganda. In 2010, beginning of 2010, we were in this community working with them. And in speaking with them, we realized that this community had never known what a potable water was, never. We worked with the communities, and the elders were telling us that the only water they've known all along is just a pond, which gets filled up after rain. So you have runoffs running into this pond. So in the year 2000, based on what they told us, the government of Uganda decided that they needed to help this community. So they dug a borehole. Good thing. Great to do that. So you can imagine the excitement in this community. People were jumping up and down. They were no longer going to use this pond, this dirty, filthy pond. So this time around, government is giving them a borehole. But that excitement actually was short-lived. Short-lived because within weeks, the water coming out of the borehole had turned brown. Yes, brown. So they couldn't use it. When they tried to drink from it, it didn't taste good, it was bad. Some of them would cook with the brown water, not good. What really made them angry was the fact that they were beginning to see that the cooking utensils were beginning to erode. There was some kind of corrosion taking place. That made them angry, very angry. So guess what they did? What is going on in this village? What is going on in this community? And someone said, guess what? We have evil spirits attacking this particular borehole. Remember that most of the rural Africa are very deeply religious people. And for such bad things, it's only from the evil spirit. So to them, it was bad. They got angry and vandalized that borehole. So they went back to the pond that had given them diseases, filthy water. So in working with them in the community, World Vision decided, let's rehabilitate this borehole, which we did. And all we had to do was to fix it with a cost-effective ion treatment plant in it. That's all we needed to do. Clean water was coming out. You can imagine the sense of jubilation in the community. People were happy, jumping up and down. And a gentleman called Joseph Rumba had this to say. He said, we had given up efforts to get clean water because the government had failed us. They did their best, but they could not. But I don't know what type of magic was done inside this, pointing to the treatment plant. We don't know the magic that was done for us to have this clean water. We cannot believe it. But I do know one thing. The water tastes real good. And I think this time around, we are going to drain that pond. Joseph added another benefit, this borehole. He said the women in this community are jubilating because before the borehole was rehabilitated, only women used to fetch water for their families. With the new borehole, now even the men help their wives to fetch water for their families. Interesting, isn't it? Share another one with you, Ethiopia. In the community of Hula, 500 people in this area. World Vision helped them to construct a borehole. Another one. What is different this time around is that we were so fortunate. The well we struck was so good. Clean water, huge. So we decided to mechanize it, or to fix it with a pump, a solar pump, going green in a remote area in Ethiopia. And as we speak, there are plans to extend what we've done to other areas. Since this campaign, we have been able to bring water to almost 1 million people. But why is this important? There are many reasons why it is important. Let me just share two with you. A child in Africa, on average, experiences at least 5 episodes of diarrhea per year. And 800,000 die each year from diarrhea and dehydration. The combined effect of poor sanitation and unclean water supply and poor hygiene results in 88% of childhood deaths from diarrhea, and it is estimated to cause 3,000 deaths per day. Here's another story from Uganda on economic development. But before I do, let me ask a couple of questions. In the 21st century, in our current digital world, the world of iPads and iPhones and other smartphones, how do you bring hope to children and youth in a community where education is not a priority? How do you do that? Let me ask you this question. How do you bring hope to a child who refuses to go to school in those areas? What do you do? How do you bring hope to a youth who drops out of school, especially in a community and a country with extremely limited opportunities? So we're not talking of the plush side of Chicago. We're not talking of the nice areas in Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles. In rural Africa, how do you bring hope to those people? What I'm going to share with you has to do with a gentleman called Tom who dropped out of school in 1995. All he knew to do was just to farm. That's all he knew. So he decided that he wanted to grow tomatoes to sell. Tom decided within months that he needed to diversify his livelihood. So he planned that he would grow maize, cassava, green beans, watermelon, and cabbage. But it was only a dream. However, the reality was different because Tom didn't have enough financial resources to get started. So he discussed his ambition with World Vision staff working in the area. As a result, World Vision's microfinance institution, which we call MedNet in Uganda, came to Tom's aid and gave him the seed money. To make a long story short, this year, Tom has earned $11,428 from selling cabbages only. Now, $11,400 may look a little bit of a small money here in Chicago. But if you come from where I grew up, if you come to the many of the areas that we visit in rural Africa, $11,428, you're a king. Again, this year, Tom has earned $393 from watermelons only. And in a month's time, Tom is going to harvest his maize. Again, Tom has decided to plant coffee this year. So today, there's visible positive change in Tom's family. Besides Tom now becoming the big gun in the village and becoming a model farmer, Tom has been able to build a house where he lives with his wife and children. The children are all enrolled in school nearby town, and Tom is able to pay for their school fees, including paying for the scholastic materials that were also needed. Tom is able to pay for medical bills when the family falls sick, and Tom is able to buy their family new clothes once in a while, something every parent would like to do. He's beginning to do it. Food is not scarce in Tom's home. He and his wife, they only go to the market to buy what they don't have at home. I need to say this. While these stories do not show up in the USA Today, while these stories do not show up in the Chicago Tribune, and while these stories do not show up in the Washington Post, I want you to know that when women and men in our operational area, the children, they value deeply what you've done and continue to do to support them. They openly talk about where they would be without your help. And I know this from traveling on the continent, that they pray for you. They do pray for you. That our Father in heaven will continue to bless anything you do. That he will bless anything you touch. That he will bless anything you dream of. Our partnership is about bringing hope to the millions of children and communities that often feel hopeless. Hopeless because of struggles. And in some cases, outright failure to be able to provide for the basics of life, so they feel hopeless. By helping to provide the basics of life, our partnership with you is helping many families and communities to become hopeful. Because advancement cannot take place without the basics of life. The building blocks of life are essential for advancement to take place. It's a universal truth, isn't it? Hope is a strength. It gives us motivation and energy to focus on what will be good for us. If you wouldn't mind, let me at this stage share with you a book I read called The Psychology of Hope, written by C.R. Snyder. He says this: very hopeful people have the ability to envision a broader range of goals than most people. Because they are hopeful people, they can come up with those goals. They can see it, can see those goals. And they do a lot more than the ordinary person. Second, they're able to exhibit greater willpower and energy in pursuing that goal. So it's not just coming up with a goal, but they're also capable of having that desire, that willpower, energy to pursue the goals. And that is necessary. It is important. And third, they have skills to produce multiple ways to reach their objectives. So you see, hope is essential. For them to be able to have that multiple ways of achieving those objectives, when they fail at this, they're able to do that, be able to move. That's what we need to do in those areas. And that's what you're trying to do, so that they don't continue to become poor forever. Now, if truly children are the cornerstones of future communities and societies, then ensuring their well-being through provision of clean, safe drinking water, providing for adequate sanitation to prevent them from the killer diseases and infection, providing bed nets to prevent these vulnerable children from getting that killer disease called malaria. I have had malaria several times. You don't want it. Some of us are fortunate to be here today. You never want to have malaria. Providing for proper nutrition to help with their cognitive skills and development so that they can do well in school, so they can have a future. Protecting these children from abuse, sometimes from their own communities. That's humankind. Humankind. We have good and bad people. So sometimes we have to protect these children from their own communities. Ensuring that these children do understand and value the love of God, which has been freely given, cannot be wrong. I like to say this: charity or philanthropy or aid, call it whatever you want, has contributed significantly to a better world. Feel encouraged that your contributions are making a difference. And let me go high up, 30,000 feet, and share some data with you. It's coming from the World Bank. In 1981, 52% of the planet lived on $1.25 a day. In 1981. Today, in 2012, that number is 20%. In 1990, 65% of the population lived on less than $2 a day. In 2008, 43% of the population lived on $2 a day. There's progress. So even though there are challenges, the world is a much better place because of people like you wanting to make a difference in people's lives. And so my personal prayer for you is that God of Abraham, God of Jacob and Isaac, God who knew you even before you were born, pour out his love into you and bless you, so that together we can continue to bring hope to the hopeless, so that together we can help them to become hopeful. Thank you very much.